Supply chain disruptions this holiday are now getting a federal investigation. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, how are those supply chain woes affecting our corner of Florida? What are your questions about this? Give us a call now. It's 549-2937. Then later, a little good news for your midweek, plus filmmaker Warren Skeels on why film incentives leaving Florida are chasing guys and women like him right out of the state to shoot their features. All of that and more ahead. But first this hour, the Federal Trade Commission is launching a probe into ongoing supply chain disruptions. The feds have ordered 9 large retailers, including Amazon and Walmart, to provide detailed information on factors disrupting their ability to obtain, transport, and distribute their products. What does this mean for our area? Remember, Amazon has a big presence here. Well, Tim Gibbons is editor at the Jacksonville Business Journal. He's been looking into this, and he's on the line. Hey, Tim, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to talk to you, as always. And as you wonder about getting your holiday packages to your loved ones on time this season, what are your questions about the supply chain issues that we've been experiencing and this new FTC probe into the problem? Give us a call now, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInjax. So, Tim, the FTC says it's ordering all of the big retailers like Walmart, Amazon, Tyson Foods, Kroger, some other big companies to open up their kimonos, basically, talk about why they can't get stuff where it needs to go in a timely manner. Tell us what we know about this.
So the idea is that they want to see if there's anti-competitive practices that are one of the things feeding into the issues that consumers are facing in getting goods through retailers. From the people we've talked to, it's not. It doesn't appear that it's the retailers themselves they are looking at, but they're using this as a way to examine everything upstream from them or downstream from them, whichever way you want to look at it. The stuff flowing into the retailers. So it's important to remember that shipping companies have an exemption from antitrust regulations. So there are things that ocean carriers can do that could be anti-competitive, and the Biden administration has been taking a more anti-monopolistic sort of approach than past administrations have taken. So getting this type of data gives them the information they need to say, is there something happening where ocean carriers are colluding or other people in the supply chain are working in ways that are not competitive that end up with higher prices or a shortage of goods?
This wouldn't be the first time that kind of accusation has been leveled at the big carriers, particularly here in our area. Let's talk about that. We've got a number of major players right here in Jacksonville who've had to fend off federal investigations in the past and allegations of colluding and price fixing in ocean shipping lanes.
Right. It's kind of an issue in the transportation industry because it's a hard industry. It's low margins and you can compete on service to some extent, but many times it's a commodity sort of business. You're getting a container from point A to point B, and people are just looking at the lowest price. So you go back several decades, the various carriers who were based here who shipped things to Puerto Rico at the time went through a federal investigation and some pretty draconian punishments for colluding on the rates they set. I want to be really clear that was years ago, and those companies have all changed their practices, and there's no hint of any of that anymore. In a similar way, if you go back again decades, the major railroads over the past couple of years have been sued recently for actions that happened, again, decades ago, related to price fixing. The idea that you have a bunch of executives sitting around saying, if we can make this line or this run this price, it's going to make it easier on all of us, and we don't have to be quite as cutthroat with each other. Again, you have issues that have occurred in the past. Nobody's saying that those are occurring with the Jacksonville-based companies now, but it has been an issue in the industry.
So it sounds, I hear you saying that there are really two things going on. One, the supply chain was initially disrupted by the pandemic, and it's contributing to the inflation consumers are seeing now, and the back orders of products and the slow delivery of products. And then two, price fixing could be exacerbating the problem even worse.
Yeah, it's the don't let a crisis go to waste sort of idea that there absolutely has been issues in the supply chain. You basically had everything shut down at the height of the pandemic last year. You still have disruptions in the China labor force where they're having trouble getting people to work in factories. So goods aren't being produced as quickly. The shipping industry, which admittedly went through some really rough times where they didn't have enough cargo a couple years ago, now they're facing this huge surge of cargo. And you get into some basic issues of, are there enough containers? Are there enough chassis to haul those containers places? Are there enough drivers to drive trucks? So all of those are very real things that are affecting the supply chain that, even if there are no bad actors, would create higher prices and would create shortage of goods. On top of that, though, you can imagine someone saying, well, in this environment, how about we keep prices high? Or in this environment, how about we don't bring more capacity online because we're making good money this way? And from everything we're aware of, that's the type of thing the FTC is looking at.
What power does the FTC or any federal agency have to actually do something about these dynamics other than look into them?
So this probe is not like a criminal probe. So it's not the the FBI sort of thing. The idea is that they're going to collect this information and then they'll decide what the next steps are. Obviously there's ways the federal government can step in on things like mergers. There's ways that they can try to level the playing field. Again, go back to the executive order that Biden signed, I want to say it was in July, but that was pushing for a range, trying to encourage more competitive behavior. Everything from importing drugs from Canada to making it easier for consumers to get their money back if they get shoddy Wi-Fi on airplanes. I think that to some extent this probe is part and parcel of that you need to do the data gathering first to see if there is a problem, and then you can figure out what the solution is.
Okay, let's go to your calls for Tim Gibbons, editor of the Jacksonville Business Journal. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about ongoing supply chain disruptions at the holidays. The Federal Trade Commission is launching a probe into the problems, and they've ordered 9 large American retailers like Amazon and Walmart, Procter & Gamble, Tyson Foods, and others to give more information to them about what's disrupting their ability to get goods where they need to go. 549-2937. Have you been experiencing problems with ordering items, having them delivered? Let us know your stories out there. 549-2937. Sam is in San Marco. Hi, Sam. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Calling because I actually ordered a Whirlpool oven December 1st of 2020, so over a year ago. And every month they basically continue to delay it. I've contacted the retailer, I've contacted the manufacturer, and many other players, and I can't seem to get an answer on when I'm actually going to receive it. I'm just wondering if maybe you guys have any advice on what I can do to not wait for the oven anymore and carry on with some festivities over at the house.
Man, I'm so sorry that's happening to you, Sam. I guess it's time to get a little toaster oven and suffer. That's just a bummer. Our own producer, Heather Schatz, has the same problem, Tim. She said her oven broke at their house, and they are being told ovens are back ordered as far out as February. So for the time being, they're cooking on the stovetop.
Well, I don't want to brag, but I just got our new dishwasher in that was back ordered by 3 months, and that was a lot of hand washing going on.
Yeah. It's like the old days for a lot of people. Yep.
It is not fun. No, and I don't know if there is a solution. I mean, calling the retailer is obviously, being the squeaky wheel sometimes does help get the dishwasher or the oven, as the old saying goes. But there is the real issue of, you still have the Port of Savannah right now has, I think it was 25 ships or 15 ships. Last time I looked earlier this week, stacked up off the coast. Port of Long Beach in California is still all tied up. Warehouses do indeed have trouble finding people to work in them. And a lot of these issues come down to a combination of the actual logistics part of it, of having a box sitting on a ship, having to get somewhere, and then the issue of then getting it out to the consumer, that once it goes to the warehouses, there's somebody to sort through it and package it up and get it out. So some of those issues truly are legitimate. And again, I mentioned earlier the issue of the factories in China, that if they are not producing goods at the same pace they were, we got used to, as consumers, having everything happen quickly, and manufacturers were ordering things just in time, and they were coming in and getting shipped right out, which means that if things aren't coming in, there's no slack built into the system. From an economic development in Jacksonville standpoint, frankly, the entire supply chain disruption does offer some opportunity. The idea of reshoring, of manufacturing moving back to the U.S. Is a reality. So there's some opportunity there. Maybe this spurs businesses to not have their supply chain stretch as far.
That's interesting because, of course, manufacturing going offshore has been a huge disruptor in communities across this country. Jobs going away. It's become a political wedge issue too, Tim.
Exactly. And that, I mentioned earlier, I'm not letting a crisis go to waste, but this is a conversation that mainly on that manufacturing and importing side, companies are having, of how far should their supply chains stretch. University of Florida is working with 2 or 3 other universities to do a regional supply chain study. They're looking at Florida and the Midwest with basically that question of how many companies are looking at shortening their supply chains. Are they trying to go, particularly on the grocery front, are they trying to get fruits and vegetables from Florida instead of getting them from California, because it obviously makes it easier to deal with any shortages? Now you just have the hassle of growing stuff, not the hassle of having somebody truck it across the country.
And with climate change, this is also maybe one silver lining of this crisis, forcing a revisit in how we get our food, how we get our products, hewing closer to home, because moving goods and produce and such across long distances is not good for the climate.
Right. I mean, there's local companies like Crowley are taking other steps to deal with the environmental impacts of shipping by trying to have shipping methods that use much less environmentally intense fuel that are more efficient, that sort of things. So you have companies in the logistics business who are trying to deal with the bad externalities of shipping things. But yeah, you're right. The closer we can get something, the less carbon intensive it is, the less impact it has on the environment.
549-2937. Eric in Arlington. Eric, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Good morning. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this were going on. The more money you have, the more power you have. You leverage that money to make more money, and pretty soon you're bending the whole system to your will, and that's what the ultra wealthy do. So it wouldn't surprise me if this was going on. But I think it's actually a good thing, because if you look at it, the way it is now, we got equal amounts of junk being shipped out of Jacksonville and junk being shipped into Jacksonville. Like, we ship stuff in, and then we load up the barge with a bunch of junk that people don't want anymore, and we ship that out. I mean, anything that discourages people from buying stuff they don't need, I think is a good thing. If that means higher prices, then good. So thanks for taking my call.
I hear you, Eric. Thanks for that. 549-2937. Rusty holding at the beaches. Hey, Rusty, go ahead.
Morning.
Good morning.
I own and operate a pool service company. I do monthly pool service, weekly pool service on pools.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a small example, Florida is the largest per capita for pools. We have the highest number of pools per individuals. And for example, chlorine is the mainstay of taking care of most pools. A 100% increase in price because of only 2 plants in the U.S. make it. One's out of work right now.
100% increase, wait a minute, on chlorine Chlorinated
Yep.
pools?
I used to pay.
Okay.
I used to pay $89 plus tax for 100 pounds of 3.5-inch pucks, those round pucks that go in. It's $159 now for the same amount, and a year ago it was $189. That was that 100% increase.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yesterday I tried to order 2 automation valves, and most people who own pools know what automation valves do. Turn the spa on, things like that. Not available. 1,200 on order across the U.S. and California and Florida because the manufacturers are not making the products. It's not just the supply line as far as shipping goes. They don't have the labor. Or they've been out of business for the last 18 months or so, and now they're trying to keep up, and it's impossible. The
Wow.
prices reflect it. The availability reflects it. Sometimes, well, a salt cell for a swimming pool so you can produce chlorine had a 6-month waiting list on it. Now,
Yeah,
what do you do as a
I've
consumer
heard,
when that doesn't work?
I'm so glad you called, Rusty, because I've heard a lot about the effects on the pool business in our areas. So how do you deal with it all?
Those times when you can't get parts, I have to make extra trips over to try to maintain a pool when you're not circulating it because you can't get a pump or a pump motor because it's just not available.
So
And
you're
then
just
when they are available, 3 weeks to a month delivery.
you're just coping with workarounds the best you can. It sounds like. Well, Rusty, thank you for sharing that. That gives
Sure.
people a window into one type of problem that all of this is creating. Tim Gibbons, economists do think this is all going to ease next year, and let's hope so.
Yes, they hope it will. And that caller was great because he pointed out several of the different nodes in the problem that we're facing. I mean, that idea that you have factories that are either not operating or not operating at full capacity. Vietnam basically shut down for months, and they're still struggling to get back online. China's the same. You have raw materials that are hard to come by. You have businesses that weren't doing anything during the pandemic and just went out of business. So now, even if they could get workers, they can't do anything. So it's every node from that material coming out of the ground, being made into something, being shipped, that is facing its own issues. And again, go back to the investigation. Obviously, when there's issues, there's opportunity for people to do bad stuff. But even without the bad stuff, there's a lot of complexity that hopefully will ease as we get into 2022.
Yeah, I mean, it's been frustrating, but it is all driven by a global pandemic. Let's talk about some good news. Gas prices are going down. The Omicron variant does not appear to be incredibly deadly. The supply chain is slowly relaxing. Can you talk a little bit about any green shoots we're seeing and a little bit more about what we might expect in the first months of 2022?
Yeah, there is the good thing of the holiday shopping season is actually shaping up to be a good one, despite the challenges. So there is some fear that basically, I mean, from an economic standpoint, having money flow around through it's a good thing. So notwithstanding the earlier caller about not wanting people to buy more stuff, but so we're seeing some good movement on that. Experiences, people buying experiences rather than things is actually up, which can be good from a local retailer standpoint. If you're somebody who can provide some sort of experience that people can give as a gift, you don't have to worry about shipping a kayak tour or a game ticket sort of thing across state lines. So experiences are becoming more popular, which can be good for the local economy.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times my parents have cautioned us to give our kids experiences rather than things. That it's
Right.
they'll remember them more, and that it's better for their mental health. It's better for our wallet. Everything. Now, this is not to dismiss the pain of local consumers and business owners. A local restaurant owner messages the show and says, "We used to pay $56 for a case of chicken. It's now $100. All food costs for us have gone up, and paper products as well." They say gloves used to be $25 a case. Now they're $60, but they were at $120, she says, at the height of the pandemic. So that gives you a sense of we peaked and we're on the back end of it, but we're not out of the pain yet for business owners and consumers in certain areas.
And people in Florida are well used to price gouging after hurricanes, which in at least some cases could be a similar dynamic. That yet, yes, indeed, obviously, after a hurricane, it is hard to get bottled water in. Nobody's dismissing the idea that in that case there is a supply logistics issue, but it's still not considered appropriate to, double or triple the price of the bottled water or the generators or whatever. So I think that's one of the pain points that business owners are feeling, that sure, some things legitimately are more expensive. We have local companies who are raising how much they pay truck drivers, for example, because they know that that's what they have to do to keep them driving. So some costs have gone up, but sometimes it's companies saying, you really need that box of chicken, so I'm going to double the price, even if there's no real reason for doing it other than a desire to make more money.
Now, you'll be covering all of this in the Jacksonville Business Journal. I'm sure local companies have some very interesting stories they're sharing with you, besides the ones you've been talking about here on the radio.
They do, and their creativity is always inspiring. We do have a lot of companies who are doing a lot of interesting creative things to get through this holiday season and into 2022. Check it out, and always great to have your insights. Thank you so much, Tim. He's Tim Gibbons, editor at the Jacksonville Business Journal. Follow him on Twitter at Reporter Tim. Have a great holiday, Tim. You too. Bye-bye. And much more still ahead. Later in the hour, some good news for your week, including Mary Daniel, a local senior, getting national recognition for her work helping caregivers. That's all ahead, but up next.
Our hero, Annie, is navigating the waters of her freshman year of high school. She loves horseback riding and desperately wants to kiss a boy before she turns 15. But she has a major character flaw, and she's prone to exaggeration, telling tall tales.
Jacksonville filmmaker Warren Skeels on his new feature film, Man in the White Van, and why he had to shoot it out of state, even though it's a Florida story. That's ahead. And right now, we're in our pledge week. If you haven't pledged yet and you want to, your money will double this week thanks to a generous supporter. Give us a call now at 353-9528.
My name's Casey Morrell, and I'm a producer and director for NPR's afternoon news magazine, All Things Considered. The job of a show director is directing our engineer and our hosts and guiding them through what's coming up in that broadcast. It's kind of like being the conductor on a very fast-moving train. The show has a specific clock, and if you imagine the show as a train, it has to get to specific stations at exactly the same time every single day. It's fun. It's a fun job. I'm a member of 3 different NPR stations. I've lived in a bunch of different places, and one thing that has helped me feel like each of those places was home was my local NPR station. When you donate to this station, you are directly supporting shows that you love and all the work behind the scenes that keeps them up and running. Here is how to give.
Please call 353-9528 or visit wjct.org/radio.
Welcome back. Well, Florida used to be a mecca for film and TV productions. Feature films shot right here in Jacksonville include G.I. Jane with Demi Moore, The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron, and many others. But those were the days of yesteryear because Florida has phased out taxpayer incentives for movie shoots and TV shows for the most part, and almost all of that business has gone to surrounding states, particularly Atlanta, Georgia, and also states like Louisiana. That's even when they're shooting a film about a Florida story, like the Ben Affleck film Live by Night. That was set in Tampa, but they shot it up in Georgia. Well, Jacksonville filmmaker Warren Skeels is in that same boat. He's shooting a film in Louisiana right now, even though it's a Florida-based story, and it's got some big names starring. Skeels told me how he wishes Florida had better film incentives. Here's that conversation.
Warren Skeels, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, always a pleasure to speak to my dear friend Melissa. How are you?
I'm good, and it's good to hear your voice, although I'm sorry to hear you're working out of state right now.
Oh, yeah.
You are shooting a film in Louisiana, actually. It's called Man in the White Van. Stars some pretty big names. Sean Astin of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Ali Larter, she's been in The Rookie, Legally Blonde. So you're shooting this great project. Tell us about it.
Well, it's called The Man in the White Van, and it's really a Florida story. It takes place in a sleepy small town, a family town in rural Florida in 1974. An ominous white van begins stalking a 14-year-old girl, our hero, Annie, who is navigating the waters of her freshman year of high school. She loves horseback riding and desperately wants to kiss a boy before she turns 15. But she has a major character flaw, and she's prone to exaggeration, telling tall tales. So when she finally works up the courage to tell her parents, they don't believe her. And this disbelief essentially isolates Annie and ultimately sets her up for a terrifying Halloween nightmare and a battle for her life, ultimately.
Oh, wow. Okay, this sounds like a good story. And of course, you're working with some great Jacksonville talent. You co-wrote the story, the script with local screenwriter Sharon Cobb. You've got some Jacksonville-based folks on the crew. And so, unfortunately, you're not shooting it in our area. You're shooting The Man in the White Van in Louisiana. And that is because, Florida doesn't provide film incentives anymore, right?
No, it is a sad state of affairs when it comes to filmmaking. And, Florida is losing out in a big way right now. And for a bunch of, executive level, above the line, below the line, personnel, writers, directors, producers, crew members who are based in Florida, there are not a lot of opportunities in Florida unless you're really out there creating them for yourself. And when you actually do, you end up having to, like in this case, take it to an entirely different state to produce your film and utilize their film incentive program. So in this case, we have essentially a Florida story with, all the key personnel from Florida, producer, writers, director, the cinematographer, Gareth Cox is from Florida. We have a production coordinator actually from Florida, costume designer, and yet we all had to pick up our boots, so to speak, and move over to Louisiana to film it and make use of the tax credits, which I will say was great because it helps you, afford the ability to make the film.
Yeah. Give me an example of how that works. A state like Louisiana or Georgia that attracts a talented filmmaker like you and all of your team, how the tax credit incentives work in another state that make it possible for you to shoot a feature film affordably.
Well, without getting too caught up in the minutia and kind of a big picture sort of look at it, they essentially have tax credits. So if you are spending whatever you spend $100 and you essentially get 30% tax credit on whatever your applicable expense is. That's an approved expense. So, writer, director, any crew member, their salary, any production-related expense is 30% tax credit that's paid back to the production after an audit at the very end. And in some instances, if you actually are hiring Louisiana-based crew or talent, there's a 40% tax credit applied to those. So there's a real incentive to film in Louisiana and utilize a local crew base and talent. And if you're spending, 4, 5, 6, or let's say keep it easy number, $10 million, and you can get, $3 million to $4 million back, you're, really reducing the risk involved in the financial output by a financier.
What do you think about the critics call it the short-sightedness of the Florida legislature, that they don't want to provide for incentives for this? Really, it's a clean industry that creates a lot of jobs, drives tourism. What are your thoughts about that?
No, it's a great industry in terms of. I mean, you just hit it on the head. It's clean energy. It's green. Provides not just jobs but high wage jobs. You're bringing money into a state and into an area. I mean, you look at something like Bloodline as a TV series down in shot in the Keys in southern Florida, and it brought in over dollars into the area over the course of one season, being spent in the area. And I think something like, or the course of a couple seasons or something along those lines, and just think about the magnitude of how much money that's coming into an area and impacting it in that, that capacity. It means everything for that area. And if you have multiple productions across the state happening in different areas, it's just a huge influx of, money into the financial resources of the areas in which you're shooting it.
Right. And you have experience with that because you're also known for directing Siesta Key. That's the popular reality show on MTV going into its 4th season. That brought a lot of attention to that part of Florida.
It did. And I have to say, I wish I had bought real estate in Sarasota back in 2017 when we got picked up. That's probably like one mistake that I wish I could go back and change. But no, I mean, it's funny because you never really know exactly what an impact of a show like Siesta Key might have on an area. And Siesta Key was somewhat a sleepy kind of beach town that got these, huge waves of spring breakers or, the snowbirds coming in late fall or the early part of the year. And now when you go down there, it is packed year round, all throughout Siesta Key and Sarasota, and there's just such an influx of business and money and new wealth in the area. And when, if I'm, out at a restaurant or something and there's people who I know that, kind of work there and that sort of thing, they'll sometimes mention to me like, oh, hey, this couple down here is from Michigan. They love this show. Do you want to say hello to them or, something along those lines. And there's just the tourism aspect of a show like Siesta Key into an area and what it does in terms of just bringing in those tourist dollars is pretty amazing. And I think that's the one thing that Florida has that a lot of other states really don't is, we're so Florida in that way with our beaches and palm trees and distinct locales that we really have something to offer that just needs to be, it needs to be transmitted over to the political side of things so it can be engineered and we can get the tax credits back in line and put us back on the map in terms of, we've always been like a top 3 state for filming. It was really New York, California, and Florida. And we've essentially fallen off the map, and it's really California, New York, Atlanta, and Louisiana now.
That's
with
right.
New Mexico kind of coming into the fray.
So, Warren, with all of that said, is The Man in the White Van coming out next fall, maybe around Halloween?
I would hope so. So I'm hoping, we'll finish the film sometime in April, and then we'll work with our sales agent and find the best place to premiere the film. And then, I would think either an August slot or maybe sometime around Halloween, since it absolutely has a Halloween vibe to it. That'd be great. We'd love that.
I can't wait to see it. Congrats on all the great work you're doing. Warren Skeels, a very talented Jacksonville filmmaker working on these great national projects. Warren, have a great holiday.
Oh, you too, Melissa. Take care.
Well, Next Avenue, the national news and community destination for older Americans that's part of our PBS system, has named Mary Daniel of Jacksonville as one of their 2021 Influencers in Aging. These are 12 innovators driving change in how Americans approach getting older. Now, Mary Daniel launched a group called Caregivers for Compromise. It's a national advocacy movement for caregivers. And it happened in response to her husband's isolation in a long-term care facility when the pandemic first struck. Mary gained national attention after she took a job as a dishwasher at the local facility on lockdown where her husband was living, just so they could continue to see each other. Mary Daniel is on the line now with more about this honor and her work. Mary, good morning.
Good morning.
And it's so good to talk to you. I want to begin by congratulating you on this honor from Next Avenue and being named one of 12 national influencers in aging. That's exciting.
It is exciting, and I'm truly honored to be in this fine group of 12 people.
Yeah. So let's explain how you got the honor. Tell us about Caregivers for Compromise and what you're doing with this advocacy organization.
I started Caregivers for Compromise when the story of my dishwashing in my husband's facility went viral, and I was starting to be contacted by people from all over the country who were in the same boat that I was. So we started this Facebook group, and it has grown tremendously over the last year. We now have a group in every single state. So we have our Florida Caregivers for Compromise, for example, so that we in every state can organize together for change in that state. Our national group is all working together. We have some federal legislation. We have an essential caregiver bill that we are pushing in states and federally to be sure that this lockdown never happens again, so that we will always, as an essential caregiver, have access to our loved ones going forward into the future, regardless of what the emergency health situations may be.
Yeah, I mean, you lived this out in your own marriage, and you got national publicity for it because you had to actually take a job washing dishes at the facility where your husband was on lockdown because you didn't want him to be isolated from you.
Correct. And when I did that and I saw that I was able to go and see him as a dishwasher, my question that I ask politicians on a regular basis now when we're fighting for this legislation is, why was I able to touch him as a dishwasher, but I was not able to touch him as his wife? We feel that we can do that safely just as the staff is doing that in these facilities.
So your experience led you to launch Caregivers for Compromise. And let's talk about Next Avenue and all of the trends that they're focusing on with influencers and aging. Finding work and purpose, championing caregivers. That's you. Reimagining healthcare for older adults, connecting younger and older generations, and talking about aging and breaking down stereotypes about aging. These are some of the things that Next Avenue is focused on. This is a big effort of PBS, so we'd love to talk about this. You'll see more about it through Forbes, PBS NewsHour, and MarketWatch. What do you think about those 5 key trends for aging in 2021?
You know, I think if COVID has done nothing else, it has really put a spotlight on aging and our elderly in our community and how they are treated. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity right now to really let this spotlight shine so that we can talk about some of these things. For example, my perspective as a caregiver, the role of caregiving, the unpaid role of caregiving, and how that affects families financially, emotionally. And so it really is giving us an opportunity because of all of the harm that has been done and all of the effects on the elderly of this pandemic, of the isolation that they've suffered. It really gives us an opportunity to shine some light on these problems and talk about them. So it's really a part of our conversation of how are we as a country, how are we as a people handling aging and handling the elderly.
Yeah. And specifically when it comes to caregivers, you know, a dear friend of mine is a caregiver to her husband these days, and she has a lot of stress in her life. And, you know, when you become a caregiver for a loved one, you think, well, I can handle this. But caregivers need support. So what's your advice to all the caregivers out there who've really had a hard time and will continue to in the new year, even as the pandemic hopefully finally eases up?
The thing that has helped me over the years the most is support from other caregivers. There are caregiver support groups all over the country. Hospice does a wonderful job across the United States. And right here in Jacksonville, where I am, there are a number of great support groups. Being with people who are going through what you are going through helps. And that's one of the purposes of Caregivers for Compromise. We serve two purposes. One is to be able to share our stories with other people who are going through what we're going through. Some are ahead of us in this journey, some are behind us in this journey. So we get help from those ahead and we can help those that are behind. And then also it serves as a place to advocate. So we can come together and work on things. One of the things that I have found that helps in this caregiving journey is feeling like you're taking action to help not only our individual families, but everyone into the future. And knowing that you're doing that sometimes makes this whole journey, this whole work worthwhile.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit more about Caregivers for Compromise. You've got this big social media network, chapters in every state. You're raising a lot of awareness. And as you mentioned, you are working to drive policy change through legislation. Tell us a little bit more about your agenda for the next year and how people can get more involved.
We're working on two separate things, and I personally am working on two separate things. The number one way is to join our Caregivers for Compromise Facebook group, and we give you directives and information so that you can then go out into your own community to your own representatives, whether they're state representative or your federal representatives and senators, and tell them your personal stories about what has happened to your loved one during the lockdown. We have HR 3733, which has been introduced in the House. John Rutherford has joined on as an original co-sponsor here, my representative in Jacksonville. It is a bipartisan bill. We have representatives on both sides of the aisle that have joined because this is a very simple, and what we're doing is asking in the federal level and the state level for a very simple designation of an essential caregiver, meaning that we can go into these facilities and be with our loved ones following the same exact safety guidelines that the staff takes. We know in Florida we were allowed to do that at September 1st of 2020 by the governor's order, and we had no uptick in the number of cases of COVID in Florida when we were allowed in. So we know we can do it safely. We have done it safely, and we know that it works. So we're working on that federally. And then I'm hoping to have, I met with Senator Aaron Bean and the ACA, Secretary of ACA, Simone Marstiller, last week in Tallahassee to talk about a Florida bill so that we can follow the order that the governor issued last year that worked so well. We do need a bill in Florida that helps cover facilities like my husband's. The federal bill will cover Medicare, Medicaid facilities, anybody that takes federal dollars. My husband's facility is a self-pay facility. And so we have to have these Florida laws, these state laws to help fill in the cracks. We're in the process of gathering stories. We have put together a national book called Saving Them to Death. And we're working on Florida stories right now so that we can show the personal stories. When you can see the faces of the individuals that were harmed, it's very hard not to agree with this legislation.
Well, again, congratulations, Mary. Mary Daniel of Jacksonville, one of several national honorees through Next Avenue's Influencers in Aging. Well-deserved, Mary, and thanks.
Thank you so much.
And in a moment, a little good news for your week. We'll be right back.
Hakka Kitchen, a new restaurant from the House of Leaf and Bean, offers plant-based Chinese countryside cuisine made from fresh, organic ingredients, paired with hand-picked teas and fine wines. Info at lovehakkakitchen.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Personal Injury and Wrongful Death Law Firm. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, answering who, what, when, where, why, and how is critical to proving the truth. More at terrellhogan.com.
On the next Fresh Air, Halle Berry. She directed the new film Bruised and stars as a mixed martial arts fighter who left the ring mid-fight 6 years ago and is trying to make a comeback. Berry became the first African American to win a Best Actress Oscar for her performance in the 2001 film Monsters Ball. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
I'm Tanya Mosley. From an English vegetable garden to a vegan Korean kitchen, from a New York baker to immigrant cooks, all are inspiration to our resident chef Kathy Gunst, who shares her top cookbooks of the year. Experiment with flavors, techniques, and inspiration from culinary cultures from around the world. Next time on Here and Now.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
Some police departments are changing the way they respond to 911 calls. Albuquerque, New Mexico is one of them.
This department is an answered prayer. It really is.
Emergency dispatchers can now send police, paramedics, or behavioral health responders. What has that change meant for the community? We'll find out next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, a special concert is coming up in St. Augustine that celebrates Spain's 240-year relationship with America. This is called the 1781 Tribute, and it's set for Saturday night at the Lewis Auditorium at Flagler College. Admission is free, folks. I got a preview from Francisco Guitard, head of Instituto Nauta, the organization putting this tour together, and Maria Dolores Gaitan, the famed concert pianist who's been featured both in Spain and here in the U.S. Here are their thoughts.
We are very, very excited, and we are looking for a trip to Florida, and I'm very delighted to introduce to Maria Dolores there. You can enjoy a lot the music, and we can share the culture, the history. We decided to name this kind of concert the Revolutionary Concert, because the shared history that there is in between Spain and United States is not very knowledge. So we think that maybe through the music we can share this history and tell to the most younger and the most older as well.
So it's a very interesting show because it's not a normal piano concert, no? Because I was introduced different part of history, you know, between Spain and America, and I speak about, for example, the anthem of the cooperation of the new music.
Now, this concert is a collaboration between the Beach's Fine Arts Series and the St. Augustine Music Festival. Maria will be performing works by Spanish composers, but she's also including a few American composers in the concert like Gershwin and Florence Price. 5-time Latin Grammy Award winner Nicolas Tovar is going to perform too. And he'll perform a song that he wrote, a piece entitled Canción de Avilés. Avilés is the birthplace, of course, of Menendez, the founder of St. Augustine. So go check out that very cool concert. And here's some more good news for your week. The LGBTQ Community Fund for Northeast Florida has approved $107,000 in grants to 5 local nonprofits to build an inclusive community. Grants will be funded from December of this year through December of next year. The fund's advisory board placed a premium on programs benefiting aging adults, African Americans, gender minorities, and kids. Well, congrats to local recording artist Brinson. Brinson is delivering thousands of dollars worth of toys and other items to local hospitals and other centers this month. And he's done this before. I checked in on what he's up to.
I'm actually doing a few. One is going to be this weekend. I'm doing a drive for St. Augustine School of the Deaf and Blind on Friday. And then this coming Sunday, I'm going to take a whole bunch of foster kids on a shopping spree at Orange Park Mall. You know, just let them go crazy. And then the big one is December 20th. I'm going to ransack some Targets, and I'm going to get a whole bunch of toys, diapers, and stuff for the kids for the pediatric wards at Orange Park Medical, Nemours, and Wilson at Baptist South. So it's going to be a busy month.
Pretty cool. Nice going, Brinson. Well, the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens is inviting everyone to witness the transformative power of light and color through illuminating nature. It's their magical outdoor experience, featuring more than a dozen illuminated fabric sculptures placed in their gardens. This event is open and free to the public on December 10th, 14th, and 17th. Register in advance on their website. And finally, if it's just not the holidays for you without the Nutcracker, try the reimagined modern version. Yeah, the hip-hop Nutcracker returns to the Florida Theater Sunday. This version features hip-hop pioneer Curtis the Breaks Blow as MC, along with a cast of a dozen all-star dancers, an on-stage DJ, and an electric violinist. They all turned Tchaikovsky's classic on its head. Learn more about the show at our Jacksonville Music Experience. Just go to jaxmusic.org and get yourself some tickets to the Hip-Hop Nutcracker on the Florida Theater's website. And if you've got some good news you'd like us to add to our weekly Wednesday menu, drop us a line. Speaking of getting in touch, if you love First Coast Connect and want to contribute to our programming and everything we do here at WJCT Public Media, call us up now at 353-9528 and pledge your support. And that's our show, and thanks so much for listening. Thanks also to Senior Producer Heather Schatz, Director Josh Torres, Associate Producer Catherine Hobbs, Editorial Director Jessica Palumbo, and News Editor Randy Roguski. I'm Melissa Ross. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. As I said, get in touch at First Coast Connect at WJCT.org and pledge your support at 353-9528. Keep in mind, thanks to the Winston Family Foundation, your dollars this week are gonna double. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day.